€248 per week. This payment will not be means tested. Entitlement will be based on an individual's employment record. In contrast, Fine Gael will only pay those who are 65 a payment of €203 a week, which will result in an annual loss of €2,340 for this age group. Now, Taoiseach, those words should sound very familiar to you, because they are, as you know, an official Fianna Fáil statement made by Deputy Willie O'Dea when he was then your spokesperson for social protection 3 days before last year's general election. You knew at that time the strength of public feeling as regards the right to a state pension for workers when they reach the age of 65. But you seem to have forgotten that in the meantime, because your government's announcement on state pension on Monday is exactly what Fine Gael proposed in the course of that election 12 months ago. Only enormous public pressure has stopped you from raising the pension age to 67 for now, and you are not restoring the state pension transition payment as you promised. You'll continue to pay 65-year-olds what is in effect a job seekers payment of only €203 a week, and that's a loss of €45 a week, a loss, as you know, of more than €2,000 a year when compared with the state pension. And this cohort of workers also stand to lose out on a range of secondary benefits, including fuel allowance, as you well know. So, in summary, you have adopted the Fine Gael policy hook, line and sinker, and this is a real blow for 65-year-olds who will rely on a decent pension to get by. The lack of fairness, the lack of respect is absolutely breathtaking, particularly in these times when people are under such enormous pressure. And you should know, Taoiseach, that by the age of 65, workers will have worked hard, paid their way, paid their bills, provided for their families, paid their taxes to this state. Many of those who now look for their pension entitlement at the age of 65 may have begun their working lives at the age of 14 or 15. They have more than paid their way. Many more have spent their working lives on their feet in very physical jobs, in factories, on building sites, in retail. And I think by the time you reach the age of 65, you are entitled to, because you have earned the respect and entitlement of your pension should you wish to retire. So your failure in this now means that many 65-year-olds who may wish to retire will have to continue working. Many will head back to their places of work even in these very difficult and treacherous times. I recognise there are those who would wish to work beyond the age of 65, and of course that right must be upheld. But it is wrong, Taoiseach, that at the age of 65, those who wish to retire are forced out the door to work because they can't afford to retire, because the state and the government do not respect their working lives. So this is actually very straightforward, Taoiseach. You're either for the right to a state pension at the age of 65 or you are not. So I want to ask you, will you confirm that under your plan 65-year-olds will be out of pocket by €45 a week? And I want to ask you, how on earth do you stand over this, particularly given your election commitments? Way over time.
Thank you. Taoiseach, please.
I want to thank the Deputy for raising the issue. And I think it's quite extraordinary, the two-dimensional thinking and approach from the Deputy McDonald and the Sinn Féin party more generally, because they say one thing in this House and they do another. They do the exact opposite in Northern Ireland on the executive, for example. So you called for a pension age of 65 here, and yet in Northern Ireland last October, the exact opposite happened, after your party voted for the pension age to be increased from 65 to 66. So everything you've thrown at me there clearly can be thrown at yourself in respect of what you've supported within Northern Ireland. You say the rate is too low, when the fact is a 65-year-old on the €2003 in the Republic is still receiving a higher payment than every single pensioner in Northern Ireland, regardless of what age they are. And where's the fairness or respect for people there? And I've noted now in the last week alone, between your proposals on fuel allowance and on the pension, you've essentially looked for about 4.5 billion in spending just in 7 days. And that's just in one government department. So we can discuss that another day in terms of how you believe, or your party believe, all of that can be sorted. In the context of the election and subsequently, we didn't win a majority, but we did decide to go into government and form a coalition government with the Green Party and with the Fine Gael Party, and pension issues form part of those negotiations. And the programme for government was very clear that 65-year-olds who are required to or choose to retire early can receive an early retirement allowance or pension at the same rate as job seekers benefit, without a requirement to sign on, partake in any activation measures, or be available for and genuinely seek work. And so we've introduced that new payment. We fulfilled the programme for government commitment in relation to that, to bridge the gap for people who are required to retire at 65, but who don't qualify for the state pension until age 66. The increase that was proposed prior to the general election, which we opposed, to 67, that did not go ahead in January. The pension age was kept at 66, and that was an outcome of the negotiations between the three parties in the formulation of the programme for government itself. And the decision not to proceed and not to allow it to go to 67 will cost 453 million euros. Obviously, there is a wider issue in terms of pension sustainability into the future. Department of Social Protection this year will spend about 25 billion euros. Over 40% of that, about 9 billion, will be spent on pension payments alone. And that is why a commission in respect of the Pensions Commission has been established, and to examine a range of issues, and the Deputy's party can make a submission, of course, to that Pensions Commission. And it's looking at the issue of mandatory retirement ages and employment contracts, where that age is below the state pension age. It's due to report back to government later this year. And I think it's important to be honest with people. The sustainability of pensions over the next number of decades will be challenging for the state. And I think that's why the Pensions Commission represents a very good context to try and outline how the state will meet its obligations and organise society into the future as we live longer and as our demographics change significantly. So, in respect of our, and just to make the other key point, that the state pension age has never been at 65. There was previously a transition pension which was abolished by the then Minister John Burton in 2014.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Time is up.
The state pension age is 66 years of age. That has been the case since 1977.
Time is up, Taoiseach. Thank you. Deputy McDonald.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. So, Taoiseach, let me just say to you very directly that you are in no position to make arguments to working people about the sustainability of very modest pension payments for them, when at the same time the gold-plated pensions that you and your predecessors enjoy are not to be touched. I mean, there is a central hypocrisy in your approach. Big pensions for the big boys and then crumbs for working people. I think it's a mark of decency in any affluent society, in any civilised society actually, that working people have the right to retire with their pension at the age of 65. People who have worked long and hard in manual labour, in retail, as carers, I could go on and on and on. And yet, rather than addressing that issue and leading from the front, as Dublin and the sovereign government here ought to do, you dodge and you prevaricate.
Okay,
Can I ask you again to confirm, Taoiseach, that your proposal will see pensioners out of pocket €45 a week, more than €2,000 a year,
please.
and I want you to justify that for those working.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach.
I'm disappointed that you failed to justify why you felt fit to raise the age to 66 in Northern Ireland and voted for it. You never squared, you never even responded to that. I mean, that's what you did. It's just hypocrisy and double standards. From our perspective, and historically, Fianna Fáil would have been responsible for a significant increase in the state pension down through the decades, particularly in the late 90s and early 2000s, when very substantial increases happened. And successive governments have done that, with the result that the Republic has, in comparison to other jurisdictions, strong state pensions. We need to improve if we can, but we need to have sustainability underpinning it as well. And that is why the Pensions Commission has been established. And as I said to you in my earlier reply, the state pension age has been at 66 since 1977. And that is the reality. I think we do have to change a broad range of areas around pensions.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Time is up.
And as I said, the Pensions Commission will bring forward a range of recommendations in relation to that and respond to people's needs in this area.